Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, Back to School Support and Resources for Reveal Math 6 to 12. My name is Sarah Shaja, and I'm the Marketing Manager at McGraw Hill based in Dubai. If you've attended earlier of our webinars that we have this series going on, by now you must be aware of how the format runs. So before I go any further, let me just check if you can hear me, the audio connection is okay. On the screens on the right side, you'll see a hand icon. It should appear just below your name. If you can click on the icon, please, if you can hear my voice. Brilliant, excellent. Okay, I see a lot of hands going up, so you can hear me, I suppose. I'll give you a brief overview of the session before we move on. So this is an implementation training session for Reveal Math 6 to 12. So if you teach grades 6 to 12 and are using Reveal Math in the upcoming academic year, this session is for you. And you will learn about teaching strategies and how you can redesign your classroom in the current environment. We have moderators for you today. So I have my colleagues Asana and Nasir, and we will be able to help you out with your queries in the chat box, or if you have any questions in the Q&A during the session as we progress. Feel free to engage with the presenter. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Unfortunately, our speaker, Christy Raffair, couldn't make it today as there's a heavy storm in Houston where she lives, but we are absolutely delighted to have DJ West join us with us today. Thank you for joining us, DJ. DJ is a National Director of Professional Learning at McGraw Hill. He has an experience of 25 years in science, math education as a teacher and also as a Dean of Student Principal. DJ coaches professional educators in presentation, technology skills across K-12 core disciplines. He delivers professional workshops in US and internationally. Thank you, DJ. Again, it's an absolute honor to have you cover up for Christy. I'm just going to hand over to my colleague, Afsana, who is going to go over housekeeping slides, and then we can hand over to DJ to continue.
Over to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. As Suresh mentioned, just before we begin, we will go over a bit of housekeeping just to make sure you guys have a seamless experience during the call. So if you experience any audio issues during the call and you've dialed in using your computer, I would recommend just disconnecting from the computer audio and then calling in using your phone, which can be done through the audio function which you initially connected to the audio with. Any connectivity issues probably are impacted either by your Wi-Fi, of course. However, any gaming platforms or high bandwidth kind of platforms that someone might be using in your home could also impact your connectivity. Of course, if you miss anything during the call, we are recording the session and we will be circulating that recording afterwards as well. So the recording will come in an email within a week of the webinar, so that could arrive anytime between today and next Tuesday, which will also include your certificate. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end as well for any questions that you may have. And then lastly, in terms of asking questions or sharing your comments, so we can't unfortunately unmute your microphones just because of the way this webinar has been set up. But if you have any questions or comments or generally any technical issues, please put them into the chat box. Of course, questions go directly into the Q&A, but if you have any technical difficulties or you're having sound issues or generally anything, just drop me a message in the chat box as well. And that's all from me, so I'll pass on to you, DJ, and you should get presenter rights over now.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then I'm going to flip over right here. So, good morning. If you would do me a favor real quick before we get started, in the chat box, and we want to make sure all of you know where it is, if you could just type in there where you're calling in from or where you're joining from, and then what grade levels you teach. I would really appreciate that. It just lets me know who the audience is. So where you're calling in from or where you're joining from, and then also what grade levels you teach. Just type that in the chat. And it's going to be very important that you find where the chat is, because we're going to use that throughout. Universal College, LA, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, 5th and 6th math. Jump in there, everyone. Don't be shy. That makes me help know that you're paying attention and that you're connected to what we're doing. So where are you joining from, and then what grade levels you teach? I'm glad that you're here too today. Kuwait, Egypt, grades 9 and 11, Kuwait high school math. Yes, just where are you joining from, and then what grade levels do you teach? Kuwait again. Excellent. Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, 7 through 12. Excellent. Good. So while we're going through this, what we're going to do is I'll stop several times as we go through and ask you to join or ask you to respond in the chat, because it's one way that we have of communicating together while we're working through this. I'm just moving a couple things to make sure that you can see the screen well. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the new Reveal Math program. We're going to look at grades 6 through 12, and one of the things I want you to realize as we're working through it is that all the things that I show you in one grade level work for every grade level. So any of the features in the digital platform, which I'm sure many of you are going to be using, are the same in 6th grade as they are in 12th grade. And then the structure of the program itself is going to have that same kind of scenario that goes along with it. So I'm going to jump in, and PowerPoint working. There we go. You're going to notice the covers of the books that are up here, and then at the bottom, the Revealed Accelerated. So we're going to look at both the way the program is set up in the digital. This is basically the agenda we're going to follow over about the next hour and 15 minutes. Now, I'm going to mix some of this up, so it's not going to be directly linear, but we are going to look at an overview of the program structure, how it's designed to be used, whether you're in person or whether you're in a remote or hybrid setting right now. We'll review the digital structure. Some of that we'll do while we're going through the program and looking at those features. We are going to do some work around the remote learning features. And I know many of you, like us here in the US, are in kind of uncertain times about how this school year will actually map out. We have schools that are face-to-face. We have schools that are hybrid, where their students are coming in 1 or 2 days a week, and then the rest is remote. And we have schools that are in all remote. So we'll look at some of the tools that can help you with that. We're going to look at the assessment system and the variety of assessments that you have. And then I'm going to pause occasionally every 15 minutes or so and see what questions are out there, so that we can make sure that we're addressing your questions in a timely manner, as well as the Q&A at the end. So please remember, if you have a question, type it in the Q&A box, and then Afsana and Sharice will actually let me know what those questions are. Okay? So to start out, one of the things that I do want to mention is that Reveal Math will work on the browser on any device. You can use it on a computer or a laptop. You can use it on a Chromebook. It will function on a tablet and on the phone. And then I'm going to ask you to jot some things down while we're going through this. One of the things I'm going to ask you to jot down is there is a free app called the Read Anywhere app from McGraw Hill. So if you were to Google Read Anywhere app McGraw Hill, it would take you right there. You can find it in Google Play, and you can also find it in the Apple Store. And that app will work on a tablet and on the phone, and will allow your students to download modules of the book and have them for offline access. So it's really important in these times that you realize that. You can have access to the actual Reveal Math book anywhere, anytime, whether you're online or not online. And that is called the Read Anywhere app. Again, it's for any tablet or it's for the phone, and it comes in both iOS and Android. So it's important that you realize you have access regardless of where you're at to be able to use the program. So we're going to jump in. The first thing we would want to do with our students is reveal curiosity. But before I go into the actual layout of the program, I do want to remind you of one thing, I'm going to go live into the platform. And as you can see, I'm on my dashboard. And in the dashboard, one of the things I want to show you before we get started is you're going to go through this training today, and you're going to come back tomorrow, and you're going to think, well, I know he said it would do this, but I don't remember where that is. It may be something as like making an assignment. It may be something like editing an assessment. It may be like connecting this to your Google Classroom. And you'll say, I don't remember how to do that. Now, you have all kinds of resources available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to help you use Reveal Math. Now, Asana said that we're going to send the recording out in the next week, but I want you to notice when you're on the dashboard, right here it says, where do you want to go? Underneath that, it says browse your course. And this is very important that you understand in order to use the program effectively. The program is laid out in 3 levels. So if I click right here, right next to browse, you're going to see there are some program resources. Right underneath that are the modules. So the first level is program, and these are resources that are for use with the program through the whole course. The next thing you're going to see is a module, and we have divided this program into modules and lessons. So if you're used to chapters, you might think of a module as a chapter. So module is the second level. If I'm looking for a resource that's at a module level, and that means like a module assessment, you're going to find it at the module level, and it will explore those resources. And then if you open a module up, what you're going to find is all of that is at lessons. So if I'm looking for something for a particular lesson, it's going to be at the lesson level. And so if you remember this structure, program, module, lesson, you're going to be able to navigate this course extremely easily. Okay? Now I'm going to go back up because there is one thing that I do want to show you at this program level. So first, you'll notice I have program overview, program resources. I'm going to click into program overview. And if I scroll down just a little bit, here, scroll down a little, you're going to see some getting started resources. So if you click that open, you're going to notice there's an overview, and this is really important right here. There is a quick start course. So after today, if you want to get in here and you want to play around, we have built some e-learning courses right into this program. And so just like if you were taking an online course, that's what this is. It will let you pick and choose what sections you want to go through, but you can use it at your own pace. Extremely important. And you're going to see a couple other things right here. There's a digital walkthrough in a video format that reminds you how to progress through the platform, like we'll look at today. And here's a welcome letter for Reveal Math. Now, the other one at the program level, I'm going to click right here. I'm going to go to program resources. And again, when you go into a category, just go down. You'll see we call these blades. You'll see all these blades that have different resources. So 2 that I'm going to show you, one right here, you're going to see the professional learning resources. That's your professional development. And if I click that open, you have a wealth of resources to support you in implementing this program. Welcome to Reveal Math, the role of teaching in Reveal Math. If I scroll down, here's my quick start course again. And by the way, this is where I would go for all the professional learning resources. If I scroll down a little bit more, there's an e-learning course on using assessments and reports for you as a teacher. There's an administrator support course. And then if I scroll down through, you're going to find a series of professional development pieces for each module for every course by one of our authors, Dr. Neville. You're going to see it's labeled for each course. So 1 is 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. And then I have some actual learning resources on different subjects, like in the mathematical practices, productive struggle and math discourse. Whenever you see library, there is a series of videos that will support you in integrating that. Using the Ignite activities, there's a workshop here that you can use, and you'll see what I mean by that later. But you've got a variety of materials here. Please remember those are there. So that professional learning is very important for you, for your ongoing development in using the resources. And then underneath that are your course assessments. And one of the things you might want to think about is you have a diagnostic and placement test for this course. And really what that is about is right now we know that we have a lot of teachers that are concerned about learning loss from last year. And in fact, it's something we should be concerned about every year. What topics or ideas or concepts are my students missing right now that are going to cause them to struggle in this course? So this is one of the pieces you can use. You're going to notice it's right here, placement and diagnostic, and then also right here. Why is it here twice? Let me tell you why. Number one, whenever you see this pinkish purple color with this graph, this means it is a digital version of the assessment. So this can be assigned out directly to your students. They can complete it digitally on any device. Right next to it is the blue color, and you'll notice right here it says Microsoft Word. So this is a Word version. If you need to use a paper pencil, we have already created it for you. And then finally on this, which is important to know, if you are tracing progress for your students, what you're going to notice is there are 3 benchmark tests for use throughout the year for you to be able to measure progress throughout the year. So just realize these are here. Those are in digital format, and you can assign those out. The reason they're in digital is we don't want you to have to score them. Those will be automatically scored for you, and you will be able to have that data right away. So in this program level are all the resources. Just quickly while we're here, I'm going to click this open. Your teacher edition for the whole course is right here. Your correlations, recommended pacing, all of these materials are at this program level. You're going to find some resources supporting different levels of students. That's the language development handbook and your answer key or your teacher edition for that. So all of that is found at that program resource level. And I just wanted to make sure, but the big one I wanted you to see here were those professional learning resources. So right here in this blade, all of those PD materials are available for you. Now, I'm going to switch back over and let's walk through the structure of the program. And we're going to be jumping back and forth. Now, we know at McGraw Hill Education, one of the things that our students struggle with, and this was really ingrained in the program through our authorship team, is that many of our students struggle with math, and part of that is their mindset. Now, I taught math for a long time, and you know what? You have those students that walk in your class and ask, why do I have to learn this? Or the other question was, when am I ever going to use this? And what we're trying to do with this in Reveal Math is we want to actually get them curious about the math. So one of the features that we built into the program is called the Ignite activity. The Ignite activity starts at the module level. Now remember, it's modules and lessons. So program, module, lesson. At the module level, so when they're beginning a new set of ideas or new concepts, we always throw this in. And one of the interesting things is if you look at this one, on April 4th, 3 students on the track team organized a challenge among themselves to run extra laps during the entire month of April. The graph shows their results for 10 days. Okay? What do you notice, and what questions can you ask about this? Now, one of the things about these Ignite activities, often they're scenario problems that talk about students, and a lot of times there is not a specific answer. And what I mean by that, the whole point of these is to get students thinking about what they would need to know in order to answer this question. So on the student side, it's all about generating curiosity about the concept that they're getting ready to learn, and then them having to use those mathematical tools that we want them to have, like perseverance and critical thinking and mathematical discourse, and build those in. So this is a way to start them out in the beginning of the module to help them work through that. Now, once they notice some of the question, you'll notice what just came up. How can you answer your questions? What strategies will you use? What assumptions would you make, if any, that you already have to know? Because sometimes our students are so used to in math just saying, okay, I have to find the answer. They don't think about what they had to do to find it. Here you have the opportunity to actually raise those critical thinking pieces as they work their way through it. And we are going to give you as a teacher a variety of support pieces to work your way through that. Now, I'm going to jump over just for a minute before I go into a lesson, and I'm going to go back online. Now, you remember, online, this is at 3 levels. Now, do me a favor really quick. In the chat box, when I look at online, what are the 3 levels the resources are organized by? I just want you to go ahead and put them in the chat. Just give me one. It doesn't matter if you have all 3 or not. What are the 3 levels in the digital? I'm going to give you, like a good teacher, I'm going to wait you out and give you a chance to answer that. So what are the 3 levels of the resources in the digital? Just type in the chat. Okay, what I mean by that is when you go online, every single resource is at a certain level when you start opening up your resources. So 1, I'll give you a hint. 1 are the program resources. So anything that's for the whole course is at 1 level. What are the other 2 levels? Good, so let's refresh this, okay? When I open this up, I have program, yes, Mohammed, very good. Then module, then in the modules, I have the lessons. So when we talk about opening up a module, and I'm going to jump into this one on linear relationships and slope, I'm going to click that open. So anything I would want to find at that module level is going to be right here. So one of the things we said at that module level, introducing each module, is an Ignite activity. And it was like the one we were just looking at about the track charts. But I want you to see when I come right down here at the module level, I'm going to look at this, and when I click Open Launch, here's my family letter for this module. Next is my Ignite activity, and you're going to notice right next to it are my teacher notes that go along with this activity. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You're going to see I have a module pretest, and by the way, just my recommendation, especially in these remote learning times, I would use this module pretest. It really is aimed at understanding if the students are missing prerequisite concepts for this module, and if they are, then you can support the students with that. I've got to launch the module video for every module, grade 6 through Algebra 2. We have a video that starts it out that shows the use of this math in multiple scenarios. We have a problem-solving strategy, and then this one is using a graph, and this one is making a table, because those are going to be used in these concepts. And then if I go to review and assess, what you're going to notice here, there is a formative assessment. There are some personal tutors available. There's a module review. There's dynamic module practice, and I'll come back and touch on those resources. My e-solutions manual, you guys are going to love this. Then my vocabulary, and then finally we have a performance task built in at each level. So in this one, you're going to notice the task is right here. The rubric for evaluating it is right next to it. All of these are module resources that are meant to be used with that whole module. So I'm going to go back up, and we're going to look at this Ignite activity. This is one of the ways to start the module. So when I click on it, I want you to notice a couple things about these resources. First, whenever I bring a resource up from the teacher side, I can go full screen with it. You're going to note right to the side of it are my recommended use. This is information for the teacher. I can hide that if I want by clicking that arrow, bring it up full screen. It's going to let you know over here, this is 4 pages. And for many of you, what you're going to want to do right here, you have a download. Any of this can be downloaded. If you're using Google, you could put this in your Google Classroom. But you notice here, this Ignite activity is the swim challenge. In this module, we're looking at slope. So in this one is how they're going to start out working with it. So they would actually scroll down. You know, here's my 3. What do I notice? What questions can I ask? I'm going to share that. And here are those questions we were looking at earlier. So this is the student version of it. Now, if I close that and I open the teacher version, you're going to see the same thing, same format with this one because this is a document. It's a Word doc, so it could be completed digitally if you needed it to be. But here is all your background information. So how to introduce this, some of the strategies that you can use. One important thing you'll find out through Reveal, how to encourage productive struggle and what are the signs of non-productive struggle. So it's a great way to introduce this. And then I want to share just a couple of things with you that relate to remote learning. So down below, I have my Launch the Module video. Now, we know that in remote learning, there are some things that you're going to do with your students when you're in a meeting or a Zoom meeting or a Teams or whatever format you're using to interact with them. And there are things you're going to want them to do independently. A couple of very important things, like this video here, don't spend your face-to-face time with students doing the video. Have them watch it on their own because you know what? They can do that. They can watch the video and garner understanding, and then if you want, you can come back and discuss that. Now, the Ignite activity, let me just give you a little feedback on that. The first time a student comes to this, the first time they do one of these, it is not going to be intuitive for our students what to do with this. You'll notice normally what they do when they get a problem is they go about immediately trying to solve that problem. That's not what we're asking them to do here. We're asking them to say, what do you notice? What kind of questions could you ask about this? And then if I scroll down a little bit, it's then what kind of strategies can I use? The first time you do this, you're going to need to interact with your students. In fact, you might start doing it together and looking at some of your questions. So this is a good face-to-face activity. As they become familiar with this, then you don't want to use the class time to go through that. You want to let the students then work on that and then use your face-to-face time to discuss it. What questions did you come up with? If you're using a platform that has breakout rooms, this is a good feature to break them out into groups, to have them do in 2 or 3s, and then come back as a whole group and discuss that. So fortunately, I X'd out of my online part. And let me go back to that real quick. Yep, okay. I have to come here and let me, you know what, let's walk into the module pieces a little bit and then we'll go through there. So we have that module level. You're going to have that module launch video. You're also going to have that Ignite activity, get them started thinking about it. Inside of the student actual book, the print book, if they're using those, they have a self-assessment about their knowledge about those topics. I would have them do that. And then when we get into the lesson, you're going to find a 4-part lesson model. Every lesson, and this is grade 6 through Algebra 2, every lesson has a launch. That launch consists of a warm-up. There's going to be explore and develop, and there's going to be an opportunity in most lessons for students to explore the math before we actually start our explanation of it. And that's important. Reflect and practice. And then finally, how do I assess this lesson and what kind of differentiation resources do I have available? So when I get into that lesson in your Teacher's Edition, you're going to find a couple things that we do first of all. We're going to look at the focus of this lesson, which domain, and what are the major clusters as well as the standards for mathematical practices that we're going to use in the module, and then what the alignment looks like in the lesson. So what did we study previously? What are we looking at now? What will we look at after this? So just to give you an idea what that progression is, this is where that pre-test comes in and can be a real benefit to you. If you do that and you can see that they're struggling with this pre-idea, you can integrate some of that into your instruction as you get them prepared. You're also going to see how we build in rigor and what those elements look like. And then this is one of the big things. Students need to have a thorough understanding of these prerequisite skills for this module. Now notice, they are prerequisite, so when you do that module pretest, it will help you see which students are missing these three ideas. They need to be able to find the absolute value, they need to be able to plot integers on a number line, and they need to apply the order of operations. And if they're missing these ideas, then you can kind of integrate them. I don't mean stop and teach new lessons. You can kind of integrate them into the topics that you're working with, okay? And then you can look at the pacing for this lesson. It's based on 45 minutes and then also a 90-minute class. A little different right now when we're doing this remote learning, be able to integrate that pacing into what that we're going to do. So what I want you to see here, these are all of the major parts built into the lesson. There's a warm-up and a launch. That's that launch. These two are that launch part of the lesson. Then we have explore and develop. So you're going to see an explore activity. You're going to see learning opportunities where we start to define the math. Then you're going to have examples that are in the student material. And then for every example, you will have an extra example that is not in the student material. There will be checks throughout. And you're going to notice that by the pinkish purple with the graph. Then they have an exit ticket, which is kind of your assessment. And then finally, there's practice that goes along with this lesson. Now, it's important to note, a lesson in Reveal Math may not be just one day. That's important. You should jot that down. A lesson in Reveal Math may be a day and a half. It may be 2 days. So you need to check that because it's not like we're wanting you to rush right through it. We're wanting to make sure the students have a grasp of the content, okay? So we want to move from that launch into some of those other pieces that help reveal understanding. So I want to take a look at this for a minute. This is out of the print book. And in this, what you're going to see is many of the lessons will start with an explore activity. So I'm going to actually go back over and go live. And okay, what I have to do here, I have to actually escape this for a minute, and I had X'd out of my program. And we're just going to log right back in. So if you were going in, this is what it would look like for you. You would put your username and password in, and then you would notice the content here that you're using. And I was in course 3, so I'm going to go back there. And when I do that, it's going to take me right back to my dashboard. Now, on your dashboard, before we walk into it, I want you to notice a couple of things. On my dashboard, I have my link to browse. I have some pieces. Hang on a second. Turn the head off. Okay, my battery died on it, so hopefully you're not having any problem hearing me. Sharice, Rapsana, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep, excellent. Okay, so what you're going to notice on the home page, assignments are right here, and this will be true for you and your students, and then lesson materials are here. Now, these are going to make sense in a minute when I show it to you. You have some quick buttons into your teacher edition, your print student ebook, and your interactive. And let me just mention the difference here. The print one is just a mirror copy of what students would have if they had the print book. The interactive is students can actually interact with the content, and we'll look at that. But these are here, and along with the Desmos calculator is built in. Now we're going to go back to the module we were in. We're going to go to linear relationships. We looked at the Ignite activity. We know that there's a video we could use for this, and then we can go into a module, and we're going to go into lesson 2 on slope of a line. Now, when I scroll down then, you're going to notice that this lesson is broken up digitally
like it's laid out in the student book. So I start with my launch. I have explore and develop, reflect and practice, and then my additional resources, which would be some of that differentiation and assessment. Now, if I go into my launch, I'm going to have a couple things here. I'm going to have a warm-up, and I'm going to have my lesson launch. Now, this could be used, the warm-up could just be used as a bell ringer. It's to get them started. It's probably using some of those prerequisite ideas that are important for this lesson. And then the launch is going to give them a scenario. Now, it's interesting, especially in middle school, the launch is also your exit ticket out the door. But it gets them, again, thinking about the math in a real-world situation. Now, all of these materials that you look through here, okay, these are all built out. We just call these tiles. You can call them anything you want. This launch is not going to be in the student book because it's meant to be something you do with the students. Now, you can digitally put it on their page. And this is one of the things I want you to see right now. With any of these resources, I, as the teacher, can do 5 things. You might want to jot these 5 things down because you're going to use them. So first one, let's say, number 1, I just want the students to have this. I want this warm-up to be on this page, and I'm going to say, before class, do the warm-up. Well, you're going to notice it says right here, this is visible to the student. Now, if you click on these 3 drop-downs right here, you're going to have the ability to either hide it from the students. Oh, sorry, let me close that one out. And you'll notice now the launch says visible, but the warm-up does not. If I want to make sure the students can see it, I click here and say show to students. That now is on their page, and they can go in and launch that. So one thing you can do is make it visible or hide it. Now, for your information, we preload a lot of this. These 3 things right on the top are all visible to the student. You don't have to do anything with it unless you don't want them to see it. If you don't care that they see the standards, click right here and say, I want to hide that. Okay? That's not on their page digitally now. So number 1, you can make it visible. Number 2, you could put it on the student calendar. So I'm going to click this and say I want to add this to the calendar. I want this to be available. It's the warm-up. I want it to be there from 9/1 to 9/2 because we're going to do this lesson for 2 days, and I'm going to say add. You will notice right here now, this says it's on my calendar. Now, if I were to go back to my home page as a student or a teacher, this would now be on my dashboard. And let me show you what I mean by that. If I click back here on my dashboard and I scroll down, on my calendar, there's my warm-up. And as a student, here's why this is beneficial. As a student, I could click on this and say, I want to view this, and I could go right to that warm-up activity. Okay? That just makes it easy for the student right from their dashboard to go in and get to that material. Okay? We're going to go back, though. We're going to go back into our course and right back where we were, which is a really nice feature for us. Okay? So number 1, we made it visible. Number 2, we put it on the calendar. Number 3, I have a streaming presentation for this lesson. It's right here. I can decide if I want this resource in the presentation or not. And all I have to do, if I don't want it, like I don't want the standards in there, I just check it. That will no longer be in my presentation. If I'm going to use it, I can just click it. Again, like with the visible to the student, we put a lot of things in the presentation. You can decide if you want to leave it there or take it out. A lot of the additional resources will not be in the presentation. Okay. Number 4, you can assign it. So we can make it visible, we can put it on the calendar, we can add it to the presentation, or I can assign it just by clicking right here, launch the lesson, what dates, start date, due date, whatever instructions, complete the launch, and generate 3 questions. Okay. How many points is it worth? Well, this is worth 10 points. And then what category is this? And you'll notice you can create a variety of categories when you set your gradebook up. Participation, homework, quiz, also. This is just an in-class assignment. If you teach multiple sections of the same course, you can assign it to all sections at the same time right here, and then you can simply click Assign. So you're going to notice now, I know when I look at this, and students will look the same way, that has been assigned out to this class. And then finally, the last thing you can do is simply open it up. And if I click on it, we're going to kind of getting used to this screen. Here are my teacher notes about it. Here's the information. Here's how much time this should take. Here's the standard it covers. And then if I want to click this out, I can, and I have it full screen. So you're going to notice here, this is the launch. One of the tallest roller coasters in the United States is the Millennium Force, located in Ohio. Passengers on the steel roller coaster experience speeds up to 93 miles per hour and a 300-foot drop. Now, you wonder, what do I do with that now? Well, there's one of two pages. If I click over, talk about it. A ride at an amusement park rises 8 feet for a horizontal change of 2 feet. What are some ways in which you can describe the steepness of this ride? So they have to think through this launch. Now, as a teacher, my teaching notes are right here. I can click this open, or I can close that. And then if I want to hide it, when I open it up, you're going to have this drop-down menu again right here. Right here, if you click on that, you can remove the teacher content so it's not on your page. Okay? So I launched the lesson, and then here's my question. And this is something I would want my students to do prior to us being live face-to-face, whether we're in class or remote. They don't need me to read that question to them. Let them read it and think about what are some of the ways they could describe this. Is it very steep? What makes it very steep? How do they know it's very steep? So on. And then when I get done with that, I can either exit to full screen and leave this, or I could have clicked right out of it. Okay. So I'm going to stop just for a second. I'm going to check your thinking right here. Okay. And I want to ask you this. What are the 5 things, just name one of them, that you could do with any of these resources for your students? What's one of the 5 things that you could do? Just type in the chat box for me. And I'm going to wait you out for a minute. Make it visible. Very good. What else? Schedule it. Yes, you could put it on the calendar. Add it to the presentation. Excellent. Yep. Assign it. Yes. And then the last one is we can open it up. We can look at it. Okay. Excellent. Thanks, guys. By the way, I'm just going to stop for a second. Sharice or Roxana, are there any questions yet?
We don't have any questions in the Q&A, and if you have any questions for DJ, please feel free to drop them off in the Q&A box and we can address them. So at this point or even earlier, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box.
Excellent. Thank you. So this is launch. The piece I would really strongly recommend you use is this launch the lesson. And then when you do that launch, it's going to get them in. So if you notice this one, we're getting ready to go into the slope of a line. And when we open this launch up, and I'm going to move those notes over, this really has them investigating the slope of a line. And they're doing it in something that relates to the real world. That's why it launches the lesson. And what I would do in this lesson is I would go down to explore and develop then. And by the way, this is just here for your support. If you need to support the vocabulary and math for your students, this is one of the resources that you can do it with, vocabulary you'll learn. So if you need that extra support, it's built in there. Now, I'm going to scroll down, and you'll notice in the Explore and Develop section, we have the orange, the green, and the blue. The orange is always going to be an explore activity. In grades 6, 7, 8, generally, not every lesson, but generally an explore will start the lesson. Then they would go into some learn, And then finally, they would have the examples. And you're going to notice multiple examples because what we're doing is through examples, we're building the content out. So you're going to notice we start with the slope of a line, what is slope, and then finding it from a graph. And then we have some examples on that. And then we're going to look at finding slope from a table. And we have some examples for that. And then we're going to look at finding slope from the formula. And we have a couple examples of that. And then we're going to do another explore around looking at horizontal and vertical slopes. And we're going to then look at zero and undefined and some examples for that. That's why many of these lessons are not just one day, is because you're exploring a concept more thoroughly. I'm going to come back up to the top. Let's look at this explore activity. Now, this is one, if you're doing remote learning, this is one I would recommend that you have the students do on their own after you've explained it to them. Now, I'm going to open this one up, and it's like anything. The first time a student gets into this, they may struggle with it a little bit. I mean, just figuring out what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to remove my teacher notes by going up here and clicking on that. I don't want those notes up there. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. Now, notice this activity has multiple pages, okay? Actually has 8 pages up here at the top. So how can you demonstrate the concept of the slope as you travel from one point to another point on a coordinate plane? You're going to use Web Sketchpad to explore this problem. Every one of the explorers is a digital interactive. This one is with Web Sketch. So if we go over a page at the beginning, how to use this sketch. Now it's going to tell me, make sure horizontal and vertical values are set to 1. Watch what happens when you press take a step multiple times. So what happens when I press take a step? Oh, it actually goes up. Okay, so that's what happens when I take a step. What happens next? To change the horizontal and vertical values, press the box, type in the number you need. And the only reason I'm doing this is when I go in here, then I can click into the box and I can make it 2 if I want. And I could make this one 3. And then I could remove this and actually say, what happens now? Oh, okay, I can see that. And really all it's doing right here is it's showing them how to use the tool. That's what this page is about. So like this one, if I set this to 2 and 3, do I think this will eventually reach the target? Why or why not? And then try it out, okay? When I go through the next steps, when asked to press the take a step button, make sure you press it 1 time. If you press it multiple times, just hit reset. And then finally, okay, press the reset anytime I need to go back to the start. Now, when you first do this, you might want to go over this first part with a little video you create with something like Screencast-O-Matic or Screencastify, and then post that on the site for them so they can actually watch you use the tool, because what they're going to do next is they're now going to try it out. So think about how you can alter the vertical and horizontal values that will send the point from the start to the target. Try different values and note how many paths you're able to find. Record the number of steps taken for each path. So as they get in here, if I look at this one, it's at 6, 6. What are the different vertical and horizontal pieces I could build in here that would get it to this target? So I'm going to ask you that in the chat. Just type in, what are the different values that I could put in here and still get it to hit the target? What are some of those? Throw those in the chat for me. What are some of the different values I could put in here that once I started taking a step would get me to 6, 6? I'm going to wait you out, guys. Come on, I know I've got my math people in here. There we go, 1, 1. Yeah, it is using Rise Run. So 1, 1, if I do that, it's going to do it. 2, 2, yes, Mohammed, that's going to get me there. 3, 3 is, and then are some other values. So I could do 6, 6 as well. So if I go in here and put 6, And then I go down and I put 6 in here too. And I click take a step. That's going to do it in one big step. And so I hope what we're doing here is we're having the students play around with the idea of slope before they actually do it. Now, if you went through the rest of this activity, what's it going to do next? It's going to change where the point is. So now it's at 7. And if I scroll down a little bit and close the chat box up, it's at 7.5. I can't use the 1-to-1, okay? I have to actually change the values to help it get up here. So that's interesting. And then I can actually move the target around, okay? So record the number of steps you've taken and then do it for each one of these. And then they can actually move it. So they can put the target at 8.12. They can put it at 15.6. So there's a variety of places. And what they're doing is playing around with this whole idea of slope. So what are the 3 paths shown? And then, if we look at quadrant 2, how do we do it? Finally, in the sketch, the starting point is no longer 0, 0. It started somewhere. It's starting in a different place at 1, 1. Now what do I have to do? And then, finally, there's an inquiry question that goes into this if they're able to work on it, okay? Now, this takes them a while. I would have them do this on their own after we got used to it. Now, like anything, when you first start doing something like this, you're going to have to get the students acclimated to it. But these explore activities are all about them inquiring. And you'll notice up here, always with these explorers, you have your calculator that they can open up, and that's the Desmos calculator built in for them to use. I'm going to close my player. That was an explore activity. Now, let's talk about a couple of use cases of this. One, it's going to help me get into the lesson, and the reason we do it this way is because if students start to play with the mathematical idea before you teach it, they have something to hang that mathematical language on. So we want them to play around with it. What happens to slope? What is slope? And you're right, it's just rise over run, but let's look at how that happens when I change the starting point and the value. And are there different ways I can describe it? Now, from there, they might go into a learn, but I'm going to stop here 1 second, and I want to make sure for all of you understand something. Now, we said you could do 4 things with this. I could put this on my calendar. If I put it on my calendar, that means students have an easy access to it, but it doesn't mean I can see their work. If I want to go in and see their work, assign it. Because once it's done and they submit it, you can go back and look at their work. You can see if they fill values in, what they put in blanks, and all that good kind of thing. So if I want to see it, assign it, all right? It's automatically going to save their work, but you know what? If you click assign, once it's done, you can go in and review every student's material. Now let's go into a learn for a second. Slope of a line. I'm going to click on learn. And this is where we're going to do some of the mathematical explanation. Now, one of the things, this information right here is directly in their student book. So as we introduce the Explorer, that's got to be done digitally. This information is right in the student book, but what we've done in these learn activities is we've integrated different little activities students could do. So you notice this. Slope as you describe steepness of a line. It's the rate of change between 2 points. We're getting into that mathematical language now. The vertical change is called rise, while the horizontal change is called run. So the slope is a ratio of rise to run. Now, if I just introduce the lesson like this without doing the Explorer, a lot of my students would have no idea what I'm talking about. But if they get to play with that activity first and get to know what it means by go up and over, rise and run make a lot more sense. And if they realize I could use different values to do it, that ratio begins to make a lot more sense. Slope can be positive or negative. The slope of a line points upward from left to right is positive. Slope of a line that points downward is negative. So what does that look like? I can actually flip the card. Oh, that's what positive is. And this is what I mean. It just makes their book a little more interactive. So some of these will have options for them to answer things. That's an example of one of the learns. It's just a short piece of content. And then notice I'm going to talk about how do I do this from a graph. And then we can look at it. So from a graph, how can I do it? And then I get an opportunity to just look at this one piece of information, okay? So they would go from here then. Let's look at a couple examples. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things about these examples. This first one, like here, the one that's in their book, has a little graph. And that little graph means there is a data check built into that example for the students that you can actually gather data if they do it digitally. So let's click into the example. And we're not going to look at all the examples, but let's look at this one. Okay, the graph shows cost of muffins at a bake sale. This one is 4 screens long. Think about it. To travel from point 24 to point 36, what's the vertical rise? Okay, go to the next page. All right, let's look at that vertical rise, okay? Choose any 2 points on the line. In this case, 2, 4, and 3, 6 are used. Press the rise and run to see vertical and horizontal change between the 2 points. So let's click rise. Okay, that goes up 2. Let's look at run. So the slope of a line is 2/1, or which answers? So you see what I mean? These become interactive for the students. Is that right? Got that one right. If I go to page 3, we're going to look at another example. How can I tell from the graph that it's positive? And then 4, this is where they have their little check. And that is a question that they can actually do that records the data. So when this comes up, it's going to ask them to start the assignment. And it's going to bring that question up, and then you're going to have that data. Find the slope of this line, okay? And they're going to have to actually work that out, and they can work it out using the math palette or the drawing tool, okay? That is one of the examples. And then the extra example, just remember this. Anytime it says extra, the students do not have it, okay? The only way they'll see it, it's not in their book. The only way they would see it is if you assign this to them. And then in this one, when they see down here, need help, if they open this up, they get a little bit of definition underneath there from them. But this is a second example that they can go into. And again, just remember, like this one's not on their page. These examples are not. So I want them to have this extra example. I just want to show it to students. Now it's on their home page, okay? So again, just remember this, 5 things you can do with all these tiles, okay? Number 1, you can put it on the student page. Number 2, you can put it on the calendar. Number 3, you can assign it. That's what you want to do if you see their work. Number 4, you can put it in the presentation. And then number 5, you can just look at it by clicking on it. Now, 2 things I want you to know. We do not expect you to click through every one of these tiles when you're working with your students. What we have done then is we have created this presentation for you. Now, this is important. This is another thing you want to jot down. Students have visibility into the presentation. So that means whatever you put in the presentation, students can see. And when you go into the student side, they're going to have a launch presentation button. And it's a great way for them to go through this lesson to do that. Now, just remember, if you want to see their work, what do you have to do? So real quick in the chat box, if you want to see their work, what do you have to do? I'm waiting on you. Assign it. Yes, guys, you have to assign it. If you do not assign it, even though they do it, you won't see the work. So if it's just in the presentation, you're not going to see the work. You do have to assign it. But let's go up and look at the presentation. I'm going to launch it. And I still have my graphing calculator up here. All right. I can open it in a new tab if I want to, all that good stuff. But it's just going to start out. Here's my warm-up. I mean, I could throw this up if I want to. If they were face-to-face in class while I'm taking attendance, I might throw the warm-up up. These have to do with prerequisite skills. Okay. I could go through each one of these pieces on the warm-up. You're going to notice this is a big presentation. I've got 22 resources in it. To get to the next one, I simply click next, and what do you think is next? It's the launch the lesson, and that we've seen this. Now, you'll notice my teacher notes are missing. If I really wanted them from my side, I could click here and bring open the teacher content. I can also, if we were working on it, I can reset the activity, okay? I can pull that over. I could go to, it's got both pages up here. If I want to get to the next page, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to my next resource. What vocabulary will you learn? And then if I want to see all the resources that are in here, I could click open my tray and actually see, oh, the next one is that explore activity we just did. If I scroll down, then I have my 2 learns, I have my examples. Notice I don't have my extra examples because I didn't put them in. I do have this extra example, right? And if I scroll down, I can see everything in here. Now, if I keep clicking through, now you as a teacher can jump ahead. If I just want to jump up to the learn, I can click right here. That will take me right into it. So it's a quick way to jump around in the presentation for you and your students. But you notice maybe I want to change this. So I'm going to click out of the presentation, and I want you to notice right next to it is the edit button. If you click edit, you're going to see everything in the presentation and not. So like today's standards are not in here. Language Development Handbook is not in here. If I want it in, just check it. If you don't want it, like I don't want the warm up, I'm going to uncheck that. And then the other thing you can do at this point is you can move things. So like I want this extra example right after the first one. I'm just going to move it. You can drag things around to make them fit what you want. So, you know what, if this were me, I'd probably take a couple of these extra examples out because I don't know that I need them. And in fact, I want this one up here. You know what, the learns I asked them to do on their own. And you know what, I'm going to hide this because this one they had a pretty good understanding of, but you get the idea. You can alter this in any way that you want. And then there's going to be a lot of things at the end that are not in the presentation. And the reason these are support resources for that assess and differentiate. So you have the ability then to edit anything in that presentation. And then one final thing I want to show you right here about the presentation. If you go all the way down, you have this area called Teacher Added Resources. And if I click here, it actually says add content. And if I click, I can add anything from my computer, or I can add any web link right here. I could add a Khan Academy video that's a precursor tutorial. I could do anything like that. And anything you add becomes a tile just like these. And then you can do the same 5 things. You can assign it. You can put it on the calendar, you can make it visible to the student, you can add it to the presentation, or you can open it up. Any of those things are opportunities for you. Now in this page, with this lesson, I'm going to highlight just a couple other things and then we're going to move on. Now I've got a quick question for you in the chat real quick, so get ready for it. After today, you have questions about using the program. Where could you go for support? After today, you know, you're wondering about something, where can you go for support? I've got you thinking about that one, don't I? You could do an extra example. You could watch the recorded video we're going to send you. In the resources, and let me show you this one real quick. That's good, guys. If I go back up here, just remember, if I scroll up, under Program Resources, you have that whole professional learning blade with all those resources that are there to help you, okay? And then, you know what, while we're talking about that, one other thing I just want to point out to you, right here, there is a help menu, and that's more about the platform. So you can also click into that for your resources. Now let's scroll down and look at what else we have in here. We looked at the learns, we have the examples, we saw the explore. So the explore is for conceptual development. The learns are for instruction. The examples in, you guys saw what that is for. Somebody tell me, what does it mean when it has the little graph right here? What does it mean with the graph? Just type it in the chat. It is digital, yes, and there's another, tracking students' work, excellent. Yeah, there's a little question here that actually tracks the data for any example that has the little graph here, okay? So guys, that's helpful for you because it allows you, while students are doing it, to actually assess their performance. Now, let's look at what else is here. A lot of the lessons have an apply. Again, you're going to notice there's a data point with that. And so this takes what they've been doing, and it's almost like a performance task. It follows a 3-step problem-solving feature. It's now that you've seen this, can you actually do it on your own? Okay. The apply is in the student book. It's also here. And then if we look at reflect and practice in, let's see what we have down here. We have their exit ticket, and that's going to go back to that roller coaster problem. We have their practice, and you're going to have different forms of the practice. Now, here is my practice. This is the digital version of it. So you notice it's got the graph. It can be assigned digitally. Here, it's in Word. It can actually be assigned in Word. I've got extra practice if you need it. Again, digital and Word. Here's my answers to the practice. My e-solutions manual is here. My personal tutors, and some of these you just need to take a look at. These are tutorials that work the students through problems. My spiral review is here, and the spiral review you notice is digital. Now I'm going to stop just for a second on the e-solutions manual, just so you realize what this is. This is only for teachers. And really what it is, it's your big solution manual. So I'm on lesson 4.2. What exercises do I want to look at? Now, you know, often as math teachers, we don't use everything. So I could say here, if I click on it, I want the even problems, the odd problems, or I'm going to do custom. And I can do this. I can say 1 through 5, comma, 7 to 8, comma, and then I'm going to do number 11. That was their problem set. What do I want this to include? I want solutions and answers. And how do I want to view this? I want to view it online, or I could say I want it as a PDF, and then I could print it. So I'm going to click View. And what you have now is every single example I put in here, I can now go in and look at this. So what happens next? Okay, that's exercise 2, exercise 1. So there's the solution. What's the answer to this one? Okay. If I go through, some of these are going to be step by step, but it actually lets you bring up each examples and then find the slope of the line. But in order to see the answer, I've got to click over here and look at it. But it actually brings up every single one, and then you can look at all the answers. That's your e-solution manual. Really, really nice piece to support you. And it's built right in at every lesson level. So I'm going to close that one out. And I'm back on my home page. Finally, if I scroll down to additional resources, these are a lot of your support and differentiation resources. So here's my answers for the Learn and Examples. It's a teacher-only piece. You notice you cannot assign it. And if I click right here, I can't make it visible to my students because it's only for you. Exploring, if you did the Explore activity in class and the students weren't on devices, this is the recording sheet to use that Explore activity. You're going to find, and this may really be important for a lot of your students, the Language Development Handbook. And for every single lesson, there is an English language development support piece. Sometimes they're vocabulary oriented. And then sometimes they are strategy oriented. So it allows the students to work with that. There's a review. This is important, by the way. This review is a review of some of those precursor ideas that students might be missing when you did the module check. And then finally, there's an extension activity for your students. And then I want to just stop with this one. Take another look is the slope of a line. This is a mini lesson, 10 to 15 minutes long, that actually is a reteaching tool. So if the students were struggling, they can go into this reteaching lesson called Take Another Look. And let me back up one step. Okay? I don't want my teacher notes. All right. Now, it starts out with a video that teaches them the concept of slope. And then step by step, they get to learn and apply that idea, right? And then as they work their way through this, there's plenty of things in to click, answer, check on, and then every one of these take another look. I'm going to click ahead. Every one of these ends with a few assessment questions, which again allows you to track the data. Okay? If you assign it, you will see their answers to this. So the resources in here, in any lesson, I'm going to go all the way back up to the top. You'll notice how much there is here. Okay? Starts out with the launch. Then we go to Explore and Develop, which is my Explore, my Learn, my Examples, and my Application Problem. I then go to Reflect and Practice, and I have multiple kinds of practice here. And then finally, Assess and Differentiate. And that's where the differentiation comes in here. And you'll notice it's even tagged for you in the materials underneath. So a couple of you ought to, by the way, let me just stop there for a second and say this. With all this material, one of the things that you ought to do, you ought to open up one module and one lesson and open up every single thing in it so you know what's here and then you can use it with your students, okay? So all of that is built in for you to be able to support you as you walk through it, okay? Now, I have about 13 minutes left. I'm just going to stop for a second and see, Sharish, are there any questions out there?
Yes, teacher, we've got a few questions. Although Nasir has answered a couple of them, but it might help others. Can we modify any of the content?
Okay, very good. Excellent question. And the answer to that is yes. And you can modify that question in two ways. Number one, any of the print documents that say Microsoft Word are simply Word. That's exactly what they are. They're Word documents. The second thing you can modify are any of the assessments. And that's one of the things I'm going to show you in the little bit of time we have left. Okay? So the assessments and any of the Word docs can be modified. Okay?
Right.
Any others?
And can I hide the calculator?
When you do the assessments, you can hide the calculator, but not in the normal presentation work. Okay, so when you're in like an Explore and Develop and it has it up there, that won't allow you to turn it off, but you do have the option in any of the assessments to make the calculator visible or not.
Mm-hmm. And one more is, how can I directly go to a particular page on Teacher's Edition?
Pardon? One more time.
How can I directly go to the Teacher's Edition page?
Oh, okay. So one of the ways to go to the Teacher Edition page, let me close my chat box for a second. And let me see if it's... I've got to look just for a second. It's a little, I do a lot of different programming. It's a little bit different in each program. So I'm going to scroll back up and go to the module level for a minute. And I think I actually have to go to the, sorry guys, I have to look just for a second.
I can help. I've answered the question. It depends, teachers, if they're looking at the ebook or the Teacher's Edition PDF, it's available in two formats.
Right. And
in resources.
Yep, right here.
And on the dashboard, if you click on dashboard, you will see that.
Nasir, thank you. Some of, and the reason I was looking, some of the programs have it in different places. As Nasir said, there are two different versions. One is right here, and I'm at the program level. And I'll show you this. Once you open it up, this is your whole teacher edition. And once it opens, it will go to wherever you were the last time you opened it up. And then you can zoom in and out of this. And once you're in it, you can open up the table of contents. And then from here, you can move right along to whatever module you want to open. So if I were going to module 3, I could do that, jump ahead. And then finally, if I close out here, next time I open it up, it would be there. And then the last piece of this, if I go over to my dashboard, this is what Nasir was referring to. If I scroll down, you're going to notice my teacher edition is right here. So I'm able to go into it from either point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so guys, to end up with, in the last 10 minutes, I want to show you two final things. Okay? One of the pieces I want to show you is there is a support program in here that, especially in remote learning, you ought to be using with all your students. So I'm going to go to a module level. We were in module 4. And I'm going to scroll down in module 4. There's my launch for the module, my review and assess, which are going to be my assessments, my formative assessment probe. But under additional resources, you have a piece called Learnsmart that's built right in. Now, this is in 6th grade all the way through Algebra 2. Everyone has this. Your students will not see this unless you assign it out. So right here, you can assign this, and I'll show you where else you can assign it, okay? You can assign this out to your students, and when I click into this, what this is a built-in learning system for your students. Now, I'm going to go full screen with this. It's adaptive, it's built on the content, and I'm going to go into self-study, and I'm going to pick functions. Now, I'm going to turn her off, and I'm going to say OK. And what it lets me do is a couple of things. It's going to start me out with a series of questions, all right? When raising a power to another power, like in 4 to the 7th, we keep the base the same, and what do we do here? And so the students go in, and this one I think it's multiply, and I'm going to say I know that, and I got that one right, okay? Let's go to the next one, okay? In this one, which line has an undefined slope? And remember, we've just been working on this. I'm going to say, I think it's this one, but I'm unsure, okay? And I can keep going on this. You notice I got this one wrong. I have some materials come up that can help me understand this. So I can look in the labels and check that out, what the different slopes are, or I could go to the library and do that. So it alternates between a series of questions and a series of support resources to help that student, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to skip that task, and I could also go into the library where there's a variety of resources here, both video and slideshows, that help me work with that topic. And when you assign this out to your students, Learnsmart right here, you can actually track their progress through a whole series of reporting options that are available to you. This is something I would have the students do offline as part of their independent study. And I can assign it by group. Now, I'm going to show you one other piece. If I go to assignments right here, this is actually the better place to assign it. I can click Add Assignment, and I can assign SmartBook out to them right here. And then this actually allows me a little bit more control over using that piece. Now I'm going to click back to assignments once more, And while I'm here, I want to show you one last thing. You're going to notice the different assignments that we made today. Here's my launch the lesson that I assigned out. If you are using Google Classroom, that's important to know. Right here, if you click on your drop-down, you can share this to Google Classroom. You can also view how your students did, okay? So Learnsmart is a piece you want to jot down, very important, especially in these remote learning times, for students to be able to stay up on the concepts. And then last thing I'm going to show you, and then we'll take any final Q&A. I'm going to go to, well, let me take that back just a second. I'm going to show you two other things. One real quick. Right here you have roster. And if you click on roster, you'll see your students that are in this class. And this is actually a really nice feature while your students are working remotely. You remember I said that if you wanted to see the students' work for any particular thing, you had to assign it. Well, there is one alternate. If you go right here, I could click on my drop down and I could actually emulate the student. And that means I'm in that student's account and I could go in and look at any of their work. And right here, you're going to see what the student's side looks like. Here's their assignments. Here's the things that you put on the calendar. Remember, you would see these once submitted, but these they can just click into to get there very quickly. Here are their tools right on their home page. So their print student edition, which is just a fixed version like a PDF, and their interactive version that has all those widgets on it, okay? So you could go in and look at the student's work right here, and when you get done, you simply click Exit, and you're back on your teacher side. So let's wrap up with one final piece. This is assessments, and what I would like you to remember is in your professional learning resources on the program resource page, you have a course on a short course on assessment and resources, because we know it's going to take you some time to do that. So when you go in, you can actually look at the variety of resources that are available. Now, you have two different banks inside of the assessment. You have your practice bank, so that would be your module dynamic practice, which is algorithmic. You would have your lesson practice. What this says is this is course 3, Reveal Math, course 3, module 4. So you notice I got modules 1 through 11. And then underneath that is my assessment bank. So it's my test bank. Again, Reveal Math, course 3, module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. All right. Then I have my course bank, which would have my diagnostic for the course, my end of course test, and so on. Let's go up. Let's click into a practice bank. Okay. Here is the practice, and it tells you which kind of practice it is, we're in module 3, which lesson. So I've got reinforcement, I've got practice, I've got reason and apply. And with anything in the assessment bank, you can click on it and look at it, or you can go right here, you can preview it, you can edit it. That was one of the questions earlier. You can edit it, you can assign it, and you can print it. Now, whenever you assign an assessment, do it from the assessment blade. Don't do it inside of a lesson or inside of a module, because you have a lot more features to be able to do it here. Now, I'm going to go back on assessment, and this time we're going to go into a test bank instead of a practice bank. Go here and go back to assessment. Let me scroll down, and let's click over the test bank. Again, you're going to see my module test. There are different levels of the module test. My putting it all together, my vocab, my review, my form B. Okay, so A, these 3 A here's, these are all the same content, but it's different versions of it. So A1, 2, and 3 are all a little bit different. Form B has questions on it for my struggling students, and Form C has questions on it for my advanced students. But again, if I click over here, I can edit, assign, or print it. I can click it open and look at what's available here. So here are all my questions. And even here, I can click next to a question. I can preview it. I can edit it, all right? Now I'm going to go back one level to this. I'm going to go in and assign this assessment. So I'm going to assign A1. I'm going to click Assign. And here you will have all your features. When it's available, date and time. Visible simply means can they see it before they start it, all right? Before it's actually due, they won't be able to open it. Like, you know, if it was before 9/1, they could see it, but they couldn't open it. What's their time limit? So I'm going to give them 60 minutes for this one. Do I need to give individual students longer time? That's what the extension is. Do I want to share it with Google Classroom? What can students see? And then when I scroll down, you're going to see this thing that says Student Settings. When you click that open, this gives you a ton of options what you want the students to have. You can change the introduction. You can give them text-to-speech. You can give them the calculator. You can not give them the calculator. If you give them the calculator, you can decide what kind they have, all right? What do you want? How do you want it to display? You've got a bunch of choices here. So just realize that when you assign an assessment, you have all those materials here for you, okay? I'm going to go back to my dashboard for a minute and remind you of two things. Number one, these materials are laid out, program, module, lesson. So wherever you're looking at the resources, program, module, lesson, you're going to be able to find those, okay? Second one, in the program resources, do not forget that you have this piece here called, let me close that up, Professional Learning Resources. You have all kinds of resources in here to support you in using this program to help you. And then finally, if your questions are more around the platform, like how do I set up a class and all that kind of stuff, right here, you've got the help menu, and it takes you to a whole series of tutorials around the platform side of it from an admin, a teacher, and a student point. So I'm going to stop there. We're at actually 2 minutes over time. And Sharice, I'll ask you any other questions that came in the Q&A, or now is your time to ask those.
Yes, please let us know if you have any questions at all. Nasir has been really helpful in answering a lot of these questions already in the chat box, in the Q&A box. But if you have any more questions for us, please let us know and DJ can answer those for you.
Sharice, I probably worn all of them out.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we have, and we're so glad that everything was really clear for you. We do have a repeat session for Reveal Math on Friday, the 4th. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat box if you'd like to register for that session, or your colleagues would like to. And thank you, DJ, for joining us. I guess we're on track and time. We've covered question answers, and if you want to stay in touch with us, please do on our social channels. Drop us in line. Can you hear me? I can hear some echo. Sorry. Hello.
You're gonna mute that.
It's better now. Sorry, I must have been something. Get in touch with us. As my colleague Afsana mentioned, you will be having the recording of this webinar as well as the option to download the certificate in a week's time. Thank you for joining us, and see you soon.